Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 93% rate. Trevor Zegras.
And they score on the lacrosse move!
Jake Gensel.
Gensel banks it towards the goalie. Score!
Cale Makar.
Cale Makar, he scores!
Stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you're a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey.
My goodness gracious me!
Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow at College Hockey.
Welcome to College Hockey Today. My name is Jason Hadjdu. I am with College Hockey Inc. He is Brad Schlossman, Grand Forks Herald hockey reporter. Schloss, welcome back from Colorado Springs. I see you made it to the lovely Garden of the Gods while you were there.
It's always a great stop there. Garden of the Gods, Old World Bagel and Deli. Those are kind of my two must stops while I'm there. Got both of them in. That was great.
No more hot dog cart since you've changed your dietary ways?
I don't know if he was out there this time. I need to go out there later at night. We stayed like a block away from where Joey Max got his hot dog cart. But I didn't go out at that late to see if he was still there. I was busy watching the Miami Hurricanes advance to the national championship game for the first time.
Your one true love.
That's right. It has not been a great 20 years for the Miami Hurricanes, but hey, they're back in the title game.
It was a great week for news in college hockey, so let's dive right in. And NHL Central Scoutings released their midseason rankings. Gavin McKenna, number 1 among North American skaters. Keaton Verhoff, number 2. 4 of the top 8 college hockey players, and in total 114 by my count, current or committed college players. 9 of those are currently in the NCAA.
I think pretty soon are all the college hockey fans going to enjoy the draft as much as I do now, because there are so many college guys with the opening of the CHL and these guys coming down. I just think it's a really exciting time for college hockey. Just you see so many of these high-end players coming, and I feel personally I've never had a better handle on the entire field because I have to know all these guys before. Once a guy goes to the CHL, it's kind of in one ear, out the other. Now it's you know the whole field, and some of these guys we just saw at the World Juniors. Some of them we'll see in the coming years at the World Juniors. It's I was the one I'll say off the top of my head where you kind of open your eyes is Ilya Morozov at number 8 for Miami. He's a guy whose stock has just shot up this year with the way he's played as one of the youngest players in the country. Maybe he was the youngest until these midseason additions started rolling in, but
he was the youngest.
Oscar Hemming, who is about to make his BC debut at number 11. Tynan Lawrence, who just made his BU debut at number 7. So some of these guys are coming in the middle of the year. And then, I know Adam Valentini doesn't have a lot of, he's not a big guy for Michigan. I was still like, come on, a guy who's producing that much at the college level. I'm trying to remember where Valentini was, but it was not it was not super high. It was not as high as I thought it should be. He was, I'm scanning the list right now, and I'm not even coming across his name on the first 2 pages. That was the one where I'm like, I just don't see him falling that far.
I just had it open, so bear with me here.
He's obviously been a really excellent player, and I'm working on a column. We'll see when I get it out, but I just think the way that these draft eligibles have played this year, especially at forward, when you talk, McKenna, Morozov, and Valentini, that
he was 109, by the way.
109. Oof, but way too low. That probably played into Lawrence and Hemming coming in at the midseason. They're watching how all these other guys are doing and saying, hey, these guys are as good as these other guys. Let's see what they can do. I watched Tynan Lawrence debut, I watched 2 of the 3 BU games this weekend, and he's going to help that team. So he's a terrific player and will be one of the first centers off the board. It'll be him or Caleb Malhotra.
I think more than half the top 30 North American skaters were college affiliated players, and we've talked a lot about parity on the ice in college hockey this year. You scan these rankings, and yes, there are a lot of Boston College, there are a lot of Michigan State, there are a lot of North Dakota. There's a Lindenwood, there's an Augustana, there's a Merrimack commit, there's a Union, there's a St. Thomas. We're seeing that, like you said, the opening of the doors to the bigger player pool. We're seeing that on the ice, and we're seeing that in these draft rankings.
Yeah, everyone's benefiting from this right now. And I just think this is a really great time to be a college hockey fan.
Good time to be Brandon Naurato, too. It was announced this week that Michigan has extended their head coach. They're having just a fantastic season. They're scoring goals. They've got a challenge this week and going forward, and we'll get into that a little later with some injury news. But Brandon Naurato extended at Michigan. Yeah,
I think through 29-30, if I remember correctly, is how long his contract will go. If you remember, he kind of came in under weird circumstances. They kind of made a coaching change late, made him interim. They went on the Frozen Four run that year, and I really think the way Michigan has played this year is what's landed him that long-term deal.
Okay, let's get on the ice here, and let's start with what did we learn this past weekend? I believe the champ is still kicking.
Yeah, Western Michigan is red hot right now. If you thought they were going to fall back, they had some ups and downs to start. They lose at home to Ferris State in the first game of the year. They go and have a 3-game losing streak, losing at St. Cloud, losing back-to-back games at home against Denver. They start out 5-5 with 3 home losses. They did not lose at home in regulation all of last year. So if you thought they were falling back at that point, 11.
Well, and I'll just add to your list. Sorry, the Väisänen injury as well.
Yeah, that was right about that time. And it feels like they've settled in now without Joona Väisänen. Like that, I think he missed that Denver series, if I remember correctly. I'm looking up he missed that Denver series where they got swept. The second night against St. Cloud is where he got hurt. So they got swept the first series without him. Now they've said they're 11-1 since then. The Broncos have won 7 games in a row. They've allowed 4 goals in the last 5 games. Oh, and by the way, in that 7-game winning streak, the wins have come against Minnesota Duluth, who is what in the MPI? I'm bringing it up right now. 4th. Minnesota Duluth is 4th in the MPI. They've beaten Wisconsin, number 3 in the RPI, and they just swept Denver in Denver, outscoring the Pioneers 10-3 in that series. Western looks like a buzzsaw right now. So, I think obviously Hampton Slakinski had a phenomenal freshman year. He had a rocky start to this year. If you go look at his save percentage after a month and a half, it wasn't great. Go look at his save percentage since, in the last month and a half here. So it's been the Hampton Slakinski we know he is. So I think that was my big takeaway from the weekend. Western's analytics the entire time have been good. So if you're a big analytics person, you might have seen them at 5-5 and said, okay, well, here's where their analytics are. They're going to be fine. The analytics were correct this time in saying the Broncos are going to be fine.
The other wins during that stretch against number 16, Boston College, and then back-to-back shutouts of Notre Dame. They're off this weekend. They'll be back at it next week in a road series at Minnesota Duluth, that'll be a big boy series. That'll be must-see hockey.
Yeah, that's going to be a great series at Minnesota Duluth. And then after that, the next 4 series for the Broncos are against teams that are currently in the bottom half or not in the top 4 of the league. So there's a chance to make up some ground. that said, it's the NCHC and everyone's pretty good in the league. So, and then Western closes against North Dakota the first time those two teams will play all year. That should be a great series too. But yeah, we're at the midway point in the NCHC, and Western Michigan is looking like they're right back in it.
Broncos are 5th in the NPI and gunning for a number 1 seed as the defending national champion. Let's talk Independence, where a lot of eyes this weekend will be on the annual Governor's Cup that resumes this weekend. It'll be in Fairbanks. They'll pick it up again in early February, in Anchorage. And 2 schools, 2 cities that are near and dear to our hearts on the college hockey circuit.
Absolutely. Does it feel like it's late for their first meeting of the year?
Yeah, it does.
I don't know if but they will see each other a lot coming up. We are going to have 8 Governor's Cups games in the next month and a half, so they'll get to know each other well. Anchorage has struggled since that really difficult road trip in November where they beat Bentley and Stonehill. We'll see how this will. The schedule hasn't been easy by any means. The Seawolves played Arizona State and Michigan Tech down in Tempe, playing at Wisconsin. Obviously difficult, and going to Fairbanks is not going to be an easy weekend this weekend. But yeah, a good college hockey rivalry is back this weekend.
I did a double take when I read that the Nanooks have won 14 straight Governor's Cup. So the Seawolves are due. The Seawolves will be angry and ready. Yes, a lot of high intensity hockey coming in the next couple of months between these 2 teams. In Atlantic hockey, the question I have is, can anyone who will slow down Bentley? Currently 1 loss in 14 conference games, coming off a road sweep at Air Force behind a big weekend from Lukas Swedin.
Yeah, and coming into the season, I don't think Lukas Swedin was supposed to be their guy, was intended to be their guy. He is just really come alive. He started the first game in November. He did not start a game or play in the game in the first month of the season. He comes in November, and he has been fantastic. He's at .933 save percentage. He's a guy who has some pedigree. He played in the U18s for Sweden. I was talking with Flow Hockey's Chris Peters about him, actually. And I didn't recall this, but Chris Peters said he was part of a goalie tandem where they were all 5'10" or shorter, which you just don't really see these days. But, Lukas Swedin has been a revelation. Yes, Lukas Swedin is from Sweden. He's from Stockholm, and I think that's been a big part of Bentley's success. We know that they've really defended well under Andy Jones. That's kind of been a key part to their identity under him. And yeah, I mean, it is entirely possible Bentley is the best team in that league. I can't remember where I picked them, but my old buddy Tucker Hodgson, who was former alternate captain for Bentley last year, he was chirping me a little bit at the start of the season, saying, "Come on, Bentley's better than that. Like, they're better than that." So Tucker Hodgson is right about his old squad. He knew, despite losing some really key players off that team that went to the NCAA tournament last year, they're right back. I just thought, losing like a guy like Nick Boken, they lost Hodges, Ethan Lay. Those guys were such big parts, not to mention goalie Connor Hasley, who went to Arizona State. But they had some really good seniors last year, and they've been able to overcome it. Great coaching job by that staff.
Listen, you don't have to defend yourself to Tucker or anyone. This has been a Bentley show at times the last couple of years. Bentley has opened up a 9-point lead on Holy Cross and RIT in the conference standings, which we still care about here on this show. Holy Cross does have 2 games in hand on Bentley. I also want to note Mercyhurst picked up their first win last Friday Someone you saw play recently, Charles Edward Gravel, with a 39 save shutout, 3-0 win over Army, his first career shutout in that win.
Yeah, he was the talk at Grand Forks a week and a half ago there, and he came in and stopped 46 of 48 shots against North Dakota. That was a 1-goal game with 6 to go. It was 1-0. Shots were 48-8 in that game, but Charles Edward Gravel played unbelievable. He did not play in the Saturday game. He was injured. He comes back on Friday against Army and does it again. 39 save shutout. You got to tip your hat to Charles Edward Gravel. Army got to him the next day, but he's big for Merciers to get on the board. You wonder if they did get some confidence from that, how tough they played North Dakota on the road a week earlier. Then they go play Army. They're going to be playing a home and home with Niagara this weekend. But the other thing is they've got some guys back. They've been so injured. They had 12 guys out to end the first half. They were playing 10 forwards, and 2 of the 10 were defensemen. So really, they had 8 forwards. They're starting to get some of those guys back, and that makes a big difference.
All right, we'll stay with the goaltending theme, and in the Big Ten, where the big news was out of Michigan, Jack Ivankovic out for the foreseeable future. Brandon Naurato, I think yesterday it was, at least left the door open for a playoff return, which would be great news for the Wolverines. But now it's Stephen Peck's job. He takes over between the pipes for the Wolverines. Yeah,
a bit of an unknown because he's hardly played this year. He played for Muskegon last year in the USHL. Muskegon won the Clark Cup, but Stephen Peck was not the guy that played in the playoffs. Their other guy who played in the playoffs, he actually committed to Miami. They had a tough time getting him into school, and he just turned pro. So I don't have a large book on Stephen Peck that he's going to have to jump in and, does Michigan maybe not play his run and gun? Do they still play their, run and gun? That'll be interesting to see. If you're a Wolverines fan, I think the things that probably give you comfort are 2. Number one, it's got a pretty good team around him. And, he probably doesn't have to be Superman. You're not asking him to be Charles Edward Gravel and stop 40 shots a night.
We've seen years a lot of Michigan teams not have Superman in goal, and they simply outscore teams on their way to the national tournament.
That's absolutely true. That's happened several times recently. Number 2, even if Peck struggles a little bit and isn't at Ivankovic's level, the Wolverines have built up such a good resume right now.
Yeah.
They're in the tournament. Like, they're number 1 in the MPI. If you're on the bubble right now, I think that's when you get really worried. You're like, oh boy, what happens now? I think it gives guys can play with more confidence knowing that there is that breathing room there, that they're not close to the bubble. And that probably helps Stephen Peck too. He's probably not going into each game thinking, oh boy, we need to win tonight or we're in trouble. That mentally has to be nice for him.
I mean, their average goal differential is nearly 3 goals per game. So you have to expect some drop off, save percentage wise. But even if there is a decent chunk of drop off, they should still be okay, to your point.
Yes.
Staying in the Big Ten, massive matchup this weekend. Michigan State at Wisconsin. That's a Thursday-Friday series. It's 3 versus 6 in the NPI. 4 points separate them in the Big Ten standings. Both of them have 2 games in hand on Michigan. Just a fantastic series ahead of us here.
Yeah, the first one was great as well. Wisconsin ended up sweeping Michigan State in East Lansing. It was 5-4 on Friday. Then Saturday's game, Porter Martone scored the extra attacker goal to send it into overtime. Ben Dexheimer won it in overtime. We just saw the series in NCHC. Denver swept Western and Kalamazoo. The Broncos went back to Denver and swept Denver in their building. Wisconsin swept Michigan State and East Lansing. Now the Spartans are going to go to Madison and try to sweep back. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think that's shaping up to be a really good series. I think these are, two teams you're looking at as Frozen Four type of teams. They're both built with a really good mix of offensive players and skill. They also have some hardness and tenacity. They have good decor. They have young players who are talented. They have older players who are really good in their lineup mixed in, and they've both got really good goaltending so far this year. So these are two teams that have it all. Should be a great series.
In the CCHA, Josh Kotai returned to the Augustana net post-Spengler Cup. All he did was post back-to-back shutouts in a sweep of Northern Michigan. His backup, Christian Mans, had led the Vikings to a sweep of CC a week prior. But it's Kotai's net again, and he did what he does.
The CCHA is shaping up to be the best race in the country right now.
Is it ever? Yeah.
Look at the standings right now. There's 9 teams. Bemidji State is in 6th place, but could be in first by the end of the weekend.
6 teams separated by 5 points.
And then there's, Lake State's lurking a little bit back there, but these teams are all jam-packed right now in the standings. August, and then you look at the MPI. We talked about this last week. They have teams hovering. You have Augustana at 12. St. Thomas at 14. Minnesota State at 17. And Bowling Green down there at 22. They're obviously having a very good year under Dennis.
They're 3 points out of first place.
They are 3 points out of first. This is going to be a real interesting race coming down the stretch. A lot of teams that are playing really well. St. Thomas, though, right now, it's like they're getting hot. That win over Minnesota State on Saturday, that was a huge game in the league. 4-2 win for the Tommies. They had a huge second period, scored 4 times in the first 8 minutes of the second period to blow that game open. That's helped them jump in the standings. But I don't know what to think. Who's going to come away with that? I feel like every week I come away thinking a different team might sneak up there, and it's a great race.
Yeah, that win by St. Thomas did put them into first place in the CCHA by percentage points, ahead of Augustana and Michigan Tech. But that's going to be a race to watch down the stretch. That's a league putting its stamp on the NPI right now. Another league putting its stamp on the NPI is ECAC hockey. One of those teams is Quinnipiac. 1 loss in the last 2 months. They're 11-1 since I think it was November 8th. They're 6-1 since losing Jeremy Wilmer to a season-ending injury.
Yeah, they just keep rolling right now. I looked at analytics about teams, expected goal analytics. When you look at both goals for and goals against expected, Quinnipiac has the best numbers in the country by a mile. It's not close right now. So they're getting it done. They're scoring a ton of goals. I think that's something that jumps out to me. Very offensive team, even without Wilmer. And it's really this freshman class that's been so good.
Yeah.
Ethan Wittenbach, Marcus Vidicek, Vero's been really good for them. 3 of the top 4 scorers are freshmen. You got Chris Pelosi up there as a sophomore. That's impressive, to have a freshman class come in and produce the way it has. And, like usual, some solid goaltending there, but it's not like what we've seen in the past where this is a team that's allowing 1 goal a game and nobody can score.
Yeah.
They're out there outscoring everyone right now this year. Just impressive offensive output by Quinnipiac this season, and I think they rank 4th in the country in goals per game. It goes Michigan, Wisconsin, and then it's the 2 ECACs, Dartmouth and Quinnipiac. Princeton 6th. So we've gotten the offensive ECAC. Cornell's 8th. How about that? The Union's tied for 8th as well. In the top 10, we have 5 ECACs.
If you're into NPI chaos, and we certainly are, keep an eye on ECAC this weekend, because Cornell is number 9. Their 2 games this weekend are against number 10 Quinnipiac and number 15 Princeton. So there's a lot of variability, variables in play this weekend in terms of the NPI race.
Yeah, a really good test for Princeton coming up, because the Tigers are about to go on a lengthy road trip. They're going at Cornell, at Colgate, at Bentley, and then to North Country, at Clarkson, at St. Lawrence. So this is a long road trip coming up. We'll see how it goes. When they get home in February, they have a 2-game set against Quinnipiac sitting there waiting for them. That's a home-and-home series with Quinnipiac, so they're going to be challenged here.
No question. We're going to switch to Hockey East now, and I wonder, is BU starting to find its level a little bit? A 4-1 win over Harvard on Monday after their split with UMass. They're 6-2 since Thanksgiving, and the goals against seem to be coming down a little bit too, since some of their early season struggles in that department.
Yeah, I think Mikhail Yegorov struggled a little bit early. Don't think he always had help in front of him, but their goals against definitely have come down. That was noted this weekend when BU only scored 1 goal against UMass and happened to get a split out of that weekend. That's pretty good. I think the other thing when I watched them, have watched them, that's noticeable is Sasha Boisvert is healthy now. I thought he was everywhere in the Harvard game and generated just a ton of offense. And if they get him going, that's big. I think they're able to switch up some things with their lines when you get Tynan Lawrence up there and put him in the top 6 and give him some special teams times. I think that helps. But yeah, BU seems like they're on a decent track. You know, this gives me an opportunity. Someone dropped a question on Twitter that said, can you win a national championship with BU's roster construction? BU's roster construction, for those that are wondering, the Terriers have 1 senior on their roster, and that's North Dakota transfer Owen McLaughlin. And they have if you count Tynan Lawrence, who's going to go in the first round, they have 20 NHL draft picks on their team. So they're very talented and very young. I don't like ever saying definitives, right? And a few years ago, Boston College almost won. They got to the final, ended up losing to Denver. Matt Davis played incredible. May have stole that game a little bit. But I think it is notable that no one has yet. There have been 2 first-round picks that have been NCAA champs in the last 7 years. So I think I don't want to say you can't, because then the next thing that happens is someone wins with that. But I do think it's notable that nobody has done it yet.
Yeah.
So,
BU is the youngest team in the country, and by quite a bit, actually. At the start of the year, they were the only team in the nation whose average age was under 20 years old, and then Michigan was next, I think, at like 20 and a half or something like that. So they are the youngest by quite a bit. And I just wanted to go back to the goals against real quick, because I looked this up this morning. Prior to Thanksgiving, BU was allowing just under 4 goals per game. Since Thanksgiving, they've carved that down to 1.6 goals against per game.
Wow.
So Yegorov and friends are doing the work. But speaking of goalies, Providence is without goalie Philip Svedebäck for a while. Mark Diver reporting a possible 4 to 6 weeks. So it's Jack Parsons in goal for the Friars, and he looked the part in a sweep of Maine last weekend.
Yeah, you know, we a few shows ago we talked about the importance of having 2 goaltenders. That's something that's jumped off the page this year. Yeah. So many teams have had injuries to their top goalies. Some of them have had ebbs and flows with performance. And Providence is a team that has 2 goalies. Jack Parsons is a guy who has pretty good pedigree. He played for Mount St. Charles. But by the way, when he was playing for that academy team, he had James Hagens and Sasha Boisvert on his team. Pretty good team. He went to NTDP for 2 years. After the NTDP, he played in Chicago. He played in the U18 Worlds. He played in U17s. Like, he's a really good pedigree. And just the reason he hasn't been playing much is just because they have Svedebäck, and he's an older, also very good goalie. But right now, Providence is sitting there saying, thank goodness we have Jack Parsons, and we have 2 goaltenders who are both ready to play. And so the fact that Parsons has stepped in and played as well as he has, I don't think it's a shock. Like, he has pedigree. Then again, allowing 1 goal in the weekend to Maine, I think if anybody does that, even if it was Philip Svedebäck, you're like saying that's unbelievably good. So great start for Jack Parsons.
Providence is the top-ranked Hockey East school in the NPI, but they are a bubble team at the moment, and the schedule ahead is not kind.
Yeah, Providence.
Yeah.
So it goes 2 games set against BC, 2 games set against BU. Then it's at Maine, at New Hampshire. It's a challenge coming up here. Big stretch for Providence. They answered the bell with the first one, though, outscoring Maine 9-1 on the weekend. The tough stretch started last week, and then they passed. We'll see how this weekend goes with the home and home against BC this weekend.
Yeah. Let's switch gears to the NCHC, and I want to talk a little bit about Denver, because this is a stretch we're not accustomed to seeing from the Pioneers, especially under David Carl. They're winless in 5, and the last 4 of those have been at home against Maine and against Western Michigan. They were swept by Western Michigan, a loss and a tie against Maine, and heading into North Dakota this weekend for a rivalry series. This is kind of uncharted territory for the Pioneers in recent years.
We are not used to seeing winless streaks like this for Denver. They have played a challenging schedule. Maine and Western is tough. But I think the goals against are what we're not used to seeing either. They allowed 8 to Maine. They allowed 10 to Western. Lost 4-3 to St. Cloud State. Those numbers need to come down. One number I did look at, though, that, I looked at that even strength expected goal total when I was browsing advanced analytics this week. And I mentioned Quinnipiac being by far and away the best team in the country in that category. Denver's number 2. So some of the analytics say Denver is not playing terrible. They've had some injuries on the back end, which probably haven't helped. Torrey Pittner's been out all year. He hasn't played yet. He's got to be getting close. Denver's timeline was 2 to 3 months with them at the start of the year. Last weekend, Garrett Brown didn't play either. So a couple guys that, aren't their headliners, but they are very good players have been out, and that doesn't help. In net, Quentin Miller has played quite well this season. He's got a .919 save percentage, and I think he has the best save percentage in conference play of any NCHC goalie. So, yeah.
I want to go from Denver to ASU real quickly here. Sun Devils had won 3 of 4 since the start of the new year, but running into some injury problems here. They were without Bennett Shimmick this past weekend, and Colin Potter had also gone down during that series. Have you heard anything? They're off this weekend, so information might be a little tough to come by, but have you heard any updates on either of those?
Yeah, I think Greg Powers said he hopes Bennett Shimmick will be back after the bye week. He did not have an immediate update on Colin Potter after the weekend, but heading into that weekend, I think Shimmick was number 2 in the nation in scoring. Potter was probably the country's hottest player.
Yeah.
And in really Arizona State, that top line was doing so much heavy lifting of that team's offense. Cruz Lucius has 32 points, Shimmick 31, Cullen Potter 26. Next closest, 12 points. So they are more than double anyone else on the team, that top line. And so that's where you look at that and you're like, man, if they're without some of those guys, that they've already lost Jack Beck for the season, who is one of those forwards. It doesn't sound like Shimmick is long-term, but boy, would that, he did not play Saturday night's game. If it were an extended absence, that would be crushing for ASU, just because that top line has been as good as any line in the country as of late.
Let's look ahead to this weekend before we sign off. We've mentioned, there are a ton of massive series and single game matchups this weekend that affect conference races, that affect the MPI, then they're just straight up great rivalry matchups. One of them is yours, North Dakota against Denver. That's 2 versus 11 in the MPI. We've talked about a couple others, including Wisconsin and Michigan State. What do you have your eyes on this weekend?
Yeah, of course, it starts out with North Dakota, Denver. The two teams that have really dominated the NCHC in the Penrose Cup over the years. St. Cloud's gotten in there a few times, but it's really been North Dakota or Denver, and they're right back in the mix. I think that's going to be a terrific series in Grand Forks. It's a rivalry series too. I think, the top rivals, North Dakota's is Minnesota, Denver's is CC, but this is number 2 for both of those teams. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty good one. I'm excited to see that. And then when I look east, I really think those ECAC series are interesting. Mm-hmm. Cornell playing Princeton and Quinnipiac back to back, I think is going to be great. I'm excited that Wisconsin and Michigan State starts on a Thursday. I can sit down and watch that and not be distracted by my game. So that should be really fun. And then the CCHA. There are a lot of teams on the MPI bubble. The challenge for those teams is going to be that the league is deep, and it's not like, it's some Minnesota State teams in the past that stayed near the top. They went into those series as like overwhelming favorites. Like they were kind of by far and away the best team in the league, and they really mopped up on their league. That's a little different this year. Mm-hmm. Like Minnesota State has to go play Michigan Tech this weekend. St. Thomas has to go play Bemidji this weekend, and Bemidji struggled lately too, but that's still a pretty good BSU team. So I think if you're watching the bubble and who's going to get in, I think those are matchups that you have your eye on. You have some of those ECAC teams that are on the bubble, and some of those, how many teams could the CCHA get in? Those are some matchups. If your team's on the bubble, you better watch those ones. Those are going to be telling series.
Before I let you go, what are you working on this weekend ahead of that DU North Dakota series?
Oh man, I got to turn on my the college hockey mode. I feel like the last few weeks I've been jumping all around from World Juniors to Spengler Cup, now getting back into it. And, I think I'm, we'll see if I can get out a column on the mid-season editions before the weekend. And we'll see what else I come up with. I'm kind of behind the game here this week, and I'm about to go to the press conference in 2 hours here. So I'm going to cram and think of a couple things to write about there, and get ready to enjoy a big weekend in Grand Forks.
Big weekend in Grand Forks, big weekend across the college hockey landscape this weekend. Schloss, thanks for joining us, and enjoy the heck out of that series this weekend.
Thanks, Hodge.
Thanks again to all of you who listen to College Hockey Today every week. There are a ton of great matchups for you to check out this weekend. Enjoy the hockey.